Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really bold transformation of village economies, and more importantly, the critical financial mechanics required to actually keep them alive. We're going to explore a fascinating framework surrounding the Koperasi Desa Merah Putih, or KDMP for short. It's an incredibly ambitious initiative designed to completely overhaul rural economies in Indonesia. But as we'll see, having a noble vision requires a lot more than just good intentions. It requires absolutely ironclad risk management. So let's dive right in.
Let's kick things off with a staggering figure. 100 trillion rupiah. Yeah, you heard that right. According to our source material, this massive number represents the estimated economic loss caused by agrarian exploitation and what the presentation starkly terms greednomics. I mean, that is an unbelievable amount of capital just leaking out of local communities and straight into the pockets of massive corporate monopolies. It perfectly sets the stage for exactly why such a major structural intervention is being proposed in the first place.
So, to unpack how KDMP plans to fix this massive leak, we're going to break this explainer down into 6 quick chapters: fixing the market failure, the new cooperative paradigm, understanding credit risk fundamentals, identifying KDMP's core risks, strategies for risk mitigation, and finally, the blueprint for sustainable growth.
Chapter 1. Fixing the market failure, where we confront the antagonist of our story.
The source material identifies some massive, systemic choke points that are literally strangling farmers. We aren't just talking about a bad harvest season here. We're talking about deep, structural barriers. The breakdown outlines everything from severe input barriers, like major fertilizer shortages, right down to the exploitative middlemen who essentially trap these farmers in endless cycles of debt.
Let's isolate the 3 main pillars of this market failure. First up, input barriers. This means farmers can't even get fertilizer when they need it most, and then when they finally do harvest, the prices completely crash. Second, middleman exploitation. This creates chronic debt traps, often involving local loan sharks who act as the grim reaper for a farmer's profits before the crops are even sold. And third, fake labeling, where bad actors illegally repackage standard rice as a premium product to steal unfair profits. These 3 pillars demonstrate exactly why a powerful intervention like the KDMP is being mandated. The system is rigged, and it desperately needs a reset.
Chapter 2. The new cooperative paradigm. This is the structural reset we were just talking about. The sources draw a really sharp contrast between the historical legacy model and the modern blueprint. The old system was very top-down, totally opaque, suffered from passive membership, and relied heavily on minimal subsidies just to survive. Now compare that with the new KDMP blueprint. KDMP is designed from the ground up as an inclusive economic engine. It demands active citizen participation, runs on a fully transparent digital ecosystem, and is backed by massive cross-ministerial support. So we're moving from a rigid administrative checklist to a dynamic, living economic engine.
And here is how that engine actually runs on the ground. By following a precise local food security cycle, KDMP essentially takes control of the entire supply chain. Step 1 is production. They supply seeds and fertilizer directly to the farmers to cut out those exploitative middlemen. Step 2, storage, utilizing safe warehousing to prevent price crashes and dumping. Step 3 is processing, keeping the milling local so that all the added value actually stays within the village. And finally, Step 4, distribution, selling those basic needs back to the community at affordable, regulated prices. It's a brilliant cycle that directly supports broader national agendas, like providing free nutritious meals for school kids and managing local energy distribution.
Okay, so it all sounds pretty perfect on paper, right? But here is the critical pivot for us. What actually happens if the cooperative itself fails to manage its money? Think about it. If the cooperative's money is mismanaged and the loans they give out to local farmers go unpaid, this entire beautiful self-sustaining system completely collapses.
Chapter 3. Understanding Credit Risk Fundamentals. Time to look at the hard science of banking.
The source material heavily emphasizes one vital concept here: the non-performing loan, or NPL. This is the key financial ratio that measures credit risk. Basically, it represents the percentage of problematic, unpaid loans compared to the total credit the cooperative has handed out. In real-world terms, a high NPL means the cooperative is bleeding cash. And if the cooperative bleeds cash, farmers don't get their subsidized fertilizer, and kids absolutely don't get their free nutritious meals. The regulatory safe zone is keeping that NPL strictly under 5%.
So how exactly do they keep it under that 5% mark? Well, by using the 6C principles. Think of this as the ultimate survival toolkit to evaluate borrowers and shield against bad loans. First, character. Are they honest,
Capacity. Can they actually generate the cash flow to pay it back? Capital. Do they have their own skin in the game? Collateral. Are their backup assets guaranteed if things go south? Condition. What do the external economic trends look like? And finally, constraint. Are there external barriers like unexpected weather disasters or new regulations? Every single loan has to pass through this matrix.
Chapter 4. Identifying KDMP's core risks. Let's see where the real vulnerabilities lie. The sources explicitly warn that KDMP faces 3 core risks. First, the high non-performing loans we just talked about, debtors just failing to pay. Second, cash flow and liquidity disruptions. This means if the money doesn't come back on time, the cooperative simply runs out of the short-term cash it needs to operate. And third, legal and borrowing risks. This specifically points to the danger of misusing village funds as collateral, which violates regulations and invites serious legal trouble. If any of these 3 risks materialize, KDMP will be totally paralyzed.
Drilling down to the root causes, we can see exactly why these risks happen. The culprits are pretty clear: unprofessional management and local elites playing politics with the loans. But the third one is arguably the most fascinating. It's a cultural issue regarding character. Village loans are sometimes mistakenly viewed by locals as free government handouts or grants, rather than strict financial obligations that actually have to be repaid.
Chapter 5. Strategies for Risk Mitigation. With the stakes defined, how do we stop the bleeding?
The source lays out a really smart, quick action plan designed to immediately stop that bleeding by removing human error and local politics from the equation. First, implement strict standard operating procedures requiring that 6C matrix checklist for every single application. It's the first line of defense. Second, segregation of duties. This is vital. The person analyzing the loan absolutely cannot be the same person approving the funds. You need an independent check. And third, periodic quarterly evaluations to constantly monitor the health of the loans.
Now, what about loans that are already failing? For those, KDMP has to aggressively apply a stepped resolution strategy before they ever resort to seizing collateral. It starts with rescheduling, which is simply extending the time to pay, then reconditioning, like maybe lowering the interest rate temporarily, then restructuring, which might actually mean converting the debt into an equity stake in the borrower's business. Only if all these steps fail does it move to intensive collection and execution. It's a very measured, stepped approach to save the cooperative's assets.
Chapter 6. Blueprint for Sustainable Growth. Moving beyond immediate survival into long-term empowerment.
Think of this transparent, 3-layer digital ecosystem called the Desa platform as the unmanipulatable engine of the cooperative. It handles system administration to ensure absolute legal compliance. It manages operations, automating all the registration and accounting. And crucially, it integrates QRIS digital payments, meaning every single transaction is recorded, non-cash, and instantly visible. This digital engine basically buries the bad stigmas of the past, because the data simply cannot be manipulated by local actors.
But if the digital platform is the engine, the real-world infrastructure is the chassis that actually delivers tangible results. The KDMP blueprint mandates real physical assets, a network of service outlets to guarantee affordable basic goods, a mobilization fleet of trucks to transport harvests directly to market, and modern cold storage facilities to keep fish and agricultural products fresh. You absolutely need both the digital brain and the physical muscle to make this whole thing work.
And this is where it all comes together into a beautiful, closed-loop system. By merging transparent digitalization, powerful physical logistics, and incredibly strict credit risk management, the village economy becomes a smart ecosystem. It's protected from outside exploitation by middlemen and safe from internal mismanagement at the exact same time.
Which brings us to this perfect summary quote from the source material. The ultimate goal of the KDMP framework is to create villages that are smart, independent, and free from legal traps and bad debt. It's not just about farming anymore. It's about building a robust, self-sustaining microeconomic that empowers the people at the very foundation of the country.
So, proper risk management isn't just some boring banking exercise. It is the literal foundation required to empower entire communities to thrive. It leaves us with a pretty fascinating question. If this structural blueprint succeeds in turning the tide against market failures and bad debt locally, how might it redefine the future of community economies worldwide? Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and we'll see you next time.